If you're new to candle making, like myself, you might have come across some questions in your head like, what variables should I look after? Does the temperature matter? Does the size of my jar matter? What do I look after when making the candle? So I've put together, through what I have researched, what I've figured out, I've put together a document of all the variables, which I will link in the description below, that you can download. And again, feel free to edit, do whatever you want with it, use it for your own purposes, see if there's something I'm missing or not missing, to hopefully help you out in your candle making. Just want to start off by saying some of these may be obvious to some. I know when I got started, these were not as obvious, and I had to do the research to figure out what's what. So if you know these, I'd say you're on the right track, and if you don't, hopefully this puts you on the right track. First variable to keep in mind is the wax that is used. Each wax will have their own properties, and it's basically the meat and potatoes of our candle. Natural waxes will have a different impact on our candle from, say, coconut, soy, IGI, so soy blends. It could affect such things as possibly the cold throw, hot throw, how the tops look like after curing, and how much fragrance oil it can take. So for example, I have a Soy Flex, and this one says that it can take up to 12%, when in general the range is up to 10%, from 6% to 10%. The second variable is our fragrance oil. Not all fragrance oils are made the same. So it is important to know which one you're putting into your candle, because it will interact differently with the wax. Thirdly is the jar specifications. Usually you will see glass, ceramic, and concrete candle jars. Each one of them will have their own pros and cons to the candle making process and to the candle in general. At the end of the day, we'll want to know the diameter of your candle. Smaller ones will need certain wicks, bigger ones will need specific wicks for that. And the color really doesn't matter. I just put it there so that way you can be more specific to when you're testing something. Then we have our wicks. This is another very big meat and potato element, if I can put it that way. There are hundreds, thousands, and millions of wicks out there. I'm just kidding. But there are so many out there, and this is basically the main source of energy, if I could say it that way. So make sure that your wick matches the diameter of the jar that you're using. But with that also said, also do the following. TEST. I, for example, had to go up 2 to 3 wicks higher than what was suggested, just to get the normal melt pull for my jar and to get it burning appropriately. Then we have the fragrance load. Usually waxes will accept up to 10% fragrance load. The range is from 6 to 10. Just so you know, more fragrance doesn't necessarily mean a better hot throw. But as I was mentioning in the previous soy as the element, that Soy Flex that I was showing you goes up to 12% possibly. So make sure you read what you're buying and what is on the label of your wax. The math, I won't go through the math here. I have a video already done on this, but it is important to make sure your math makes sense so you can tweak what needs to be tweaked or save what needs to be saved. Otherwise, how will you replicate your greatest candle ever? Next, we have the wax melt point. Maybe I could reword this, and you can change it up as much as you want. Feel free to do what you want with it. What I mean by wax melt point wax melt point is this is kind of a general piece, but for example, if you take the Soy Flex that I was giving you an example of before, you will see that the directions here, it says to heat up to 160. And now we all know that for the most part, the suggested temperature is 180. That is the most ideal temperature that the FO would combine with the wax. Now again, this is why I'm putting this point here, so that way it's either 160, 180, try it at both and see, how that affects the overall candle. Next, we have the pouring fragrance oil temperature. Now, this is something that I have heard different opinions on. Usually you will hear that you have to heat up the wax to 180 and pour the FO right away. Or I've seen people make it work with pouring the FO at 120, some at 150. Googling what the optimal pouring temperature is, or the FO pouring temperature is, you will get so many different opinions and answers. So really simply just keep this in mind, what you did here, and see what comes of it. Pouring wax into jar temperature, at what temperature do you pour the wax into the jar? Simply. If you've done some research, you've most probably heard like 20 different numbers, which just simply indicates that what works for them won't work for you, what works for me won't work for them. And so just keep this number in mind and tweak it accordingly if you think that this might be a big issue. After that, we have the jar temperature during pouring. Another very interesting variable. Some have used a heat gun to get the jar to the same temperature as the wax. Some put the jars in the oven. Some don't do that at all. But how will this affect the candle? Only the candle god knows, and you after you test it. Room temperature might seem a bit of a weird one, but I think it does matter from everything that I've read. If you have the wax curing, for example, in a cold room or a breeze, it's blowing on the side of the jar, or you left it by a very hot stove, you might get, for example, wet spots or uneven tops from this. And finally, comments and outcomes. I don't think I have to explain this too much. This is if you notice that say you stirred too quick, saw bubbles in the wax, or there's air pockets coming out of your candle, or you had to top it up again after 2-3 minutes for whatever reason. Just anything that you think would be relevant that could affect the make of the candle. So that kind of sums up the variables that you could start looking into when you're candle testing. I'm sure there's more that can be added to this, but I think this is like a good start. It's a good baseline to look at. So if you think that there's more to be added, or something's missing, or good, whatever, feel free to comment down below. Feel free to edit this, do what you gotta do to make this work for you.